There comes a time in your life when you have to stop playing it safe. You've been praying for a miracle, asking God to open doors, but you're still standing behind the same wall of fear you built years ago. Faith doesn't grow in safety. It grows when you step out into the unknown. You've got to get uncomfortable. You've got to move even when you don't know what's next. The moment you decide to take that risk, that's when God starts to show you what He's been holding for you all along. You can't keep your feet on the shore and expect to walk on water. Every person who's ever witnessed a miracle had to step out on something that didn't make sense. You can't calculate faith. You can't schedule a miracle. You've got to leap when everything in you wants to stay still. That's the breaking point between ordinary and extraordinary. When you take that leap, heaven takes notice. You want to know why some people never see miracles? Because they never risk looking foolish. They stay in the crowd when God's calling them to the front line. They play small when faith requires boldness. God doesn't do the impossible through the cautious. He does it through the courageous. Every big breakthrough starts with someone saying, "I might fall, but I'm still going to step." Some of you have been praying for change, but you've been standing still. You've been asking God to open a door, but you haven't knocked. You're asking for direction, but you haven't moved your feet. God moves when you move. He responds to action, not hesitation. Miracles chase motion. The longer you wait for the perfect moment, the further the miracle drifts from your reach. It's time to stop playing it safe. Safety will give you comfort, but faith will give you destiny. Safety might keep you protected, but it will also keep you limited. God can't bless what you refuse to step into. The next level of your life is not waiting for a sign. It's waiting for a step. That step may look risky, but that's where you meet God's power. When you stop living by what's predictable and start trusting what's possible, you'll see God do things that defy logic. Faith never fits in the blueprint of reason. It's built in the unseen, birthed in the uncertain, and proven in the impossible. Every step of faith is an invitation for God to move. And when you finally take it, heaven backs you up in ways you never imagined. Don't wait until everything feels perfect. Don't wait until you've got all the answers. You'll never be ready enough for what God wants to do. Just start. The miracle doesn't happen when you have it all figured out. The miracle happens when you take the first step believing He will make a way where there isn't one. Too often, we look at our situation and try to size God up against it. We say things like, "I don't have enough money," or "The doctor said there's no chance." But faith doesn't measure God by the problem. It measures the problem by God. The moment you stop comparing your storm to your strength and start comparing it to His, everything changes. Your situation might be big, but your God is greater. You can't keep limiting a limitless God. He's not bound by your resources, your experience, or your environment. You might be running on empty, but God doesn't need a full tank to take you where He promised. He can make a way in the desert, He can bring water out of a rock, and He can still multiply what looks too small. You've got to stop asking how and start saying, "I can." When you believe God for the impossible, you stop relying on what's logical. Logic will tell you there's no way. Faith says, "Watch Him make one." The moment you try to understand how God will do it, you shrink the power of the one who doesn't need your understanding. He just needs your trust. You're not meant to figure Him out, you're meant to follow Him through. Some of you are walking by sight when God called you to walk by faith. You keep waiting for a sign before you believe. But God says, believe before you see. If you only believe when it's visible, that's not faith, it's observation. True faith is believing when the evidence says otherwise. That's when heaven leans in and says, "Now I can work." Don't put a limit on what God can do because of what you've been through. Your past doesn't define His power. He's not asking you to understand the details, He's asking you to trust His character. Even when you can't see the outcome, trust the nature of the one who never fails. If He promised it, He's already prepared it. Faith grows when you stop comparing God's promises to your problems and start comparing your problems to His power. You serve a God who can calm storms with a word, raise the dead with a whisper, and create galaxies with a thought. Why would you doubt what He can do in your life? The impossible is not His obstacle. It's His opportunity. The next time you face something that looks too big, don't panic. Just say, "God, I know this looks impossible, but that's exactly where you specialize. He doesn't need the odds in your favor. He is the odds. When you stop measuring your situation by your capacity and start measuring it by His power, the impossible becomes your new reality. Let's be honest, faith doesn't always look sensible. It looks foolish. It looks like believing for a job when you've been turned down 10 times. It looks like starting a business with no connections. It looks like trusting God for healing when the report says, no chance. But that's exactly how faith operates. It's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to make power move. Every miracle in Scripture started with someone looking a little crazy. Noah built an ark with no rain. Abraham packed his bags with no destination. Peter stepped out of a boat onto waves that were meant to drown him. They all look foolish until faith made it work. If you're scared of looking ridiculous, you're not ready for the miraculous. Sometimes, God will tell you to do something that contradicts common sense. That's not because He's trying to embarrass you. It's because He's trying to elevate you. You can't walk into supernatural results with natural reasoning. When you obey without understanding, you unlock what logic could never produce. Faith doesn't ask, does this make sense? It asks, did God say it? People will doubt you, they'll laugh, they'll call you unrealistic. But remember, people who play it safe never get to see God's wild side. Let them talk, let them laugh, because one day when the promise shows up, those same people will have to admit that it was God all along. Faith might look foolish today, but it'll look genius tomorrow. Don't expect everyone to understand your obedience. Faith is personal. What God spoke to you, He didn't whisper to them. You can't explain faith decisions to people who only live by logic. When you believe God for the impossible, you'll always stand out. But don't shrink back just to fit in. Your obedience is the seed for your breakthrough. God uses foolish steps to prove divine power. He loves to take what the world calls crazy and turn it into evidence. The moment you step out and do what doesn't make sense, you give Him room to do what doesn't seem possible. The people who mock you today might be the ones asking for your secret tomorrow. Let faith make you look foolish, because when it works, it'll silence every doubt. So don't wait until people understand you. Don't wait until the path looks safe. Faith was never meant to be explained. It was meant to be experienced. You'll never walk on water if you keep sitting in the boat. Sometimes the craziest decision you make will be the one that changes your entire life. There's nothing harder than waiting when you've done everything right. You've prayed, you've worked, you've believed. And still, nothing's happening. It's easy to think God forgot. But a delay doesn't mean denial. God's timing is not your timing. He's not late, He's aligning. The waiting season isn't punishment, it's preparation. Sometimes God holds back what you're praying for because He's protecting what He's building in you. You want the blessing, but He wants your character to match it. He won't release the miracle until you can handle the weight of it. What feels like a delay is often divine training. He's shaping you for the very thing you're asking Him for. You've got to learn how to wait with faith. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means trusting while preparing. When you're in the delay, don't waste your time worrying. Use it to get ready. God's not making you wait to frustrate you. He's using the waiting to strengthen you. Every not yet is a setup for a greater yes. If you give up during the delay, you'll miss the blessing that was already on its way. Most people quit one step before the miracle. They stop praying, stop believing, stop expecting. But faith that can't wait can't win. You've got to hold on when everything in you wants to let go. God's silence doesn't mean absence. It means He's still working behind the scenes. The delay teaches dependence. It forces you to rely on God, not your strength. When you finally receive what you've been believing for, you'll know it wasn't luck. It was the Lord. The longer the wait, the greater the glory. God makes you wait only when what He's preparing is worth it. When you're tempted to question God's timing, remember this: He's never been early, but He's never been late either. The same God who's taking time is the same God who's taking care. Trust His process even when it feels like He's forgotten the promise. The blessing may be delayed, but it's still destined. The wait might stretch your faith, but it will also strengthen it when it finally happens, and it will. You'll look back and realize why it took so long. God wasn't punishing you, He was preparing you. Sometimes the waiting room is the workshop for your miracle. There will be moments in life when you won't feel strong. You'll feel tired, uncertain, and afraid. That's when your words matter the most. When everything around you looks dark, you've got to speak light. When your faith feels weak, speak it anyway. The power of faith isn't in how confident you feel. It's in what you declare despite your fear. You may be trembling inside, but your words can still carry the authority of heaven. Faith doesn't deny reality. It declares God's truth over it. When the doctor gives you bad news, faith doesn't pretend it didn't happen. Faith says, yes, that's the report, but I believe God's report more. When the bills pile up, faith doesn't ignore them. It says, my God shall supply all my needs. You've got to speak the outcome before you see the result. Your words are seeds, and when spoken in faith, they grow even in barren ground. There will be times when your emotions and your faith will fight. Your feelings will say, it's over, but your faith must respond, it's not finished. You can't let your mouth agree with your fear. The moment you start speaking defeat, you give fear a microphone. Silence the fear by speaking faith. Declare victory before it happens. God doesn't move through worry. He moves through words spoken in belief. Every great move of God begins with someone speaking it into existence. The world itself was formed by words. God said, let there be light, and there was light. You're made in His image, so your words carry power too. Stop saying what you see and start saying what you believe. Stop repeating the problem and start prophesying the promise. What you speak in faith will start shaping your future. Some people talk themselves out of blessings because they speak negativity into their atmosphere. They say, I'll never make it. It's always been hard for me. Those words build invisible walls around their potential. Don't curse your own miracle with careless words. Shift your language and you'll shift your life. Speak life until you see life. You might feel shaky, but you can still speak strong. You don't need perfect faith, just a persistent one. Keep saying it even when your voice trembles. Keep declaring it even when your heart doubts. Faith grows every time you speak it out loud. Don't wait until you feel brave to speak faith. Speaking faith is what makes you brave. The power of faith isn't found in the absence of fear. It's found in the refusal to let fear silence you. Even if all you can whisper is, God will make a way, that's enough to move mountains. Your words activate heaven's response. Speak faith when you're shaking, because the same voice that trembles in fear can still command miracles in faith. There are moments in life when God lets everything fall apart, not to destroy you, but to reveal Himself. You'll reach a point where no amount of money, talent, or strategy can fix it. That's when God steps in. The impossible is His invitation to show you who He really is. You don't truly know God as a provider until you've been broke. You don't know Him as a healer until you've been sick. You don't know Him as deliverer until you've been trapped. He reveals Himself through what you thought would ruin you. Sometimes, God will let you hit rock bottom just to show you that He is the rock. You'll look around and realize that everything you depended on failed. But He didn't. He'll strip away the false security so your faith can rest on the real source. When you run out of options, that's when heaven's options open up. The impossible isn't a setback. It's a setup for a divine encounter. We love to talk about miracles, but no one wants to be in a situation that requires one. We pray for power, but want comfort at the same time. It doesn't work that way. God will put you in a position where only He can get the glory. He'll let the odds be stacked against you just to prove that He doesn't need odds to win. When it finally happens, everyone, including you, will know that it had to be God. You see, God doesn't reveal Himself in the easy seasons. He reveals Himself in the impossible ones. The lion's den wasn't Daniel's punishment. It was his platform. The fiery furnace wasn't meant to kill Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It was meant to reveal the presence of a fourth man in the fire. The thing you're crying about today might be the very stage where God's glory is about to shine through your life. Don't run from the impossible. Face it with faith. The same God who parted the Red Sea is still moving seas for people who dare to believe. Your situation might look dead, but God is still in the resurrection business. He's not asking you to fix it. He's asking you to trust Him in it. He'll show you that what's impossible for man is completely possible for Him. When life doesn't make sense, that's when faith is most alive. You'll never experience God's power if you always play it safe. The impossible forces you to depend on Him in ways you never would otherwise. It's in that dependence that miracles are born. The greater the impossibility, the greater the revelation. You may be standing in front of something that looks too hard, too big, too broken. But that's exactly the kind of scene God loves to work in. Don't panic when it looks impossible. Smile and say, "This must be where God's about to show off." The impossible isn't your limitation. It's His opportunity. One of the hardest lessons in faith is realizing you can't control everything. You either trust God or you try to play God, but you can't do both. Most of us want God's miracles, but on our terms, in our timing, and in our way. That's not faith, that's management. Faith says, "God, even if I don't like it, I still trust you." You've got to release control if you want to receive what heaven's holding for you. We love to quote, "Walk by faith," but walking by faith means walking without full information. It means you don't get to see the map, just the next step. And that's uncomfortable. But God does it that way for a reason. If you could control it, you wouldn't need Him. The very thing you're trying to hold on to is the thing blocking what God wants to release. You've got to let go to go forward. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving God permission to be God. It's saying, "Lord, I'm tired of trying to force what only you can fulfill." Sometimes faith looks like surrender. It looks like taking your hands off and saying, "God, I trust your way more than mine." Control feels safe, but it's really just a form of fear. And fear can't produce faith. You can't pray for peace while still trying to run the show. You can't ask God to lead you while refusing to follow. The miracle you're praying for is often on the other side of your release. When Abraham laid Isaac on the altar, he didn't just sacrifice his son, he surrendered his control. That's why God blessed him. When you release what you've been gripping, you make room for God to grip your life. Some of you are exhausted, not because God has failed you, but because you've been trying to do His job. You've been losing sleep over things that are in His hands. The reason you feel heavy is because you're carrying what wasn't meant for you. Faith doesn't carry burdens, it casts them. You've got to give it over, fully and finally. When you finally surrender, something shifts inside you. The peace you were chasing suddenly finds you. The weight you were under suddenly lifts. That's when miracles start happening, because miracles require space, and control takes up all the space. The moment you let go is the moment heaven can take over. Faith and control can't coexist. The tighter you hold on, the less you'll see God move. But the second you say, "Lord, I can't," but you can, everything changes. Faith starts where your control ends. The blessing is waiting for the one who's willing to release it all and trust God's hand more than their own. If God showed you everything He wants to do in your life, it would scare you. That's because His vision for you is always bigger than your resources, your education, and your network. He gives you dreams that stretch you beyond your limits, so you'll rely on Him. The size of your resources doesn't determine the size of your destiny. Your faith does. Don't let what you lack make you doubt what God can do. When God gives you a vision, it never comes with all the details. He gives you direction, not a budget. He gives you purpose, not a plan. He wants you to trust Him for the pieces as you go. If you had everything in place, it wouldn't require faith. God deliberately gives you a dream that exceeds your means because He wants to prove that His supply is supernatural. Stop waiting for everything to be perfect before you move. If you're waiting for enough money, enough time, enough people, you'll be waiting forever. Start with what you have and watch God multiply it. David only had a sling. Moses only had a staff. The widow only had oil. God never asks for what you don't have. He uses what's already in your hands. You might be looking at your vision and thinking, "I don't have the connections," but favor is better than connections. Favor will take you places that qualifications can't. When God breathes on your vision, doors will open that no man can shut. Stop looking at your resources through human eyes. Start seeing them through heaven's economy. God doesn't need much. He just needs faith. Sometimes, God will even strip resources away so you'll stop depending on them. He'll make you lean on Him instead of leaning on what's comfortable. When you finally realize He's your source, not your job, not your degree, not your background, that's when He starts to pour out blessings that blow your mind. God doesn't need your abundance to perform. He uses your lack to prove His. The enemy wants you to believe you're not enough, that your dream is too big, that your resources are too small. But remember, God called you knowing exactly what you had and what you didn't. If He gave you the dream, He's already planned the provision. The vision may look impossible to you, but it's already finished in Him. Don't downsize your dream to match your bank account. Don't lower your expectations to fit your current level. God's not asking you to figure it out. He's asking you to step out. Move with faith. Speak with confidence. Believe like you've already received it. The resources will catch up to the revelation if you just keep walking in obedience. There will always be a voice that tells you, it's not going to happen. That voice will whisper in the quiet moments when you're tired, frustrated, and waiting. It will sound like logic. It will sound like reason. But make no mistake, it's doubt. And doubt will do everything it can to drown out your faith. You can't silence doubt by ignoring it. You silence it by speaking louder in faith. You have to let your belief raise its volume until your fear gets quiet. Doubt will always come when you're close to breakthrough. It doesn't show up at the beginning. It shows up right before the blessing arrives. It tries to convince you to quit while heaven is still working. You can't listen to that noise. Faith must become your language even when you don't feel like speaking it. You've got to look doubt in the face and say, you may talk loud, but I trust God louder. You can't stop doubt from knocking, but you can decide not to let it in. Doubt feeds on attention. The more you think about it, the stronger it gets. But the moment you start declaring truth, reminding yourself what God already said, doubt begins to shrink. Faith doesn't grow in silence. It grows when you speak it in the middle of the noise. Open your mouth and talk back to your fear. When the enemy starts telling you you're not qualified, answer him with faith. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. When he says you'll never make it, respond, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You fight doubt with declaration. Every time you quote God's promises, you remind your spirit who's in control. The word of God becomes your weapon, and faith becomes your volume. Doubt sounds convincing because it uses your memories against you. It says, remember the last time you failed. Remember how long it's been. But faith says, remember the last time God came through. Remember the miracle you didn't deserve but still got. When you replay the wrong memories, you fuel the wrong voice. Shift your focus. Feed your faith with remembrance instead of regret. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to trust God anyway. The enemy's job is to make you believe your doubt disqualifies you, but it doesn't. Even strong believers have moments of uncertainty. The key is not letting doubt dictate your direction. When your fear gets loud, turn up your worship. When anxiety rises, speak God's promises until peace returns. Doubt might be loud, but faith has authority. It doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand. Stand firm in what you know. Stand firm in what God promised. Every time you choose faith over fear, heaven moves on your behalf. Let your faith be louder than your doubt, and your destiny will follow the sound. If your dream doesn't make you nervous, it's probably too small. God doesn't give you dreams that fit your comfort zone. He gives you dreams that stretch your faith. He wants you to depend on Him, not your own strength. Big dreams expose small faith, and small faith limits big purpose. That's why you can't dream according to your ability. You've got to dream according to His capacity. When God gives you a vision, it will always be bigger than what you think you can handle. You'll feel underqualified, underprepared, and overwhelmed. That's intentional. He's not trying to intimidate you. He's trying to involve you. The dream He placed inside you isn't supposed to make sense. It's supposed to make faith rise. If you can do it without Him, it's not from Him. Too many people downsize their dreams to fit their circumstances. They say, maybe that wasn't for me, just because it looks impossible right now. But faith doesn't downsize, it dares. Faith says, even if I can't see how, I'll still believe it's possible. The dream might look too big, but so did Goliath. Big dreams require big faith, and big faith always brings big results. Your dream will always be tested before it's fulfilled. Don't be discouraged when the road gets rough. That's part of the process. God is building your faith to match your future. The greater the calling, the greater the challenge. But the test isn't meant to break you. It's meant to build you. Every time you keep believing when it's hard, your faith expands and your dream gets closer. Stop letting small thinkers talk you out of big visions. Some people can't see what God showed you because it wasn't meant for them. Don't shrink your dream to make others comfortable. Their doubt doesn't define your destiny. Surround yourself with people who speak faith, not fear. You need voices that remind you who your God is, not who you're not. The size of your dream will require a new level of courage. You'll have to walk into rooms that intimidate you, speak words that stretch you, and believe for things that scare you. But remember, courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you move forward despite the fear. God doesn't call the fearless, he calls the willing. If the dream feels too big, smile. It means you're right where you should be. God gives impossible dreams to remind you that it's not by might nor by power, but by his Spirit. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep walking in faith. The dream may be big, but so is your God. Faith without movement is just talk. You can't pray for a door to open and never get up to knock. You can't believe for a harvest and never plant a seed. Too many people are waiting on God, while God is waiting on them to take the first step. Miracles don't chase the motionless. They chase the movers. God moves when you move. Every great story of faith started with action. Noah built. Abraham walked. Moses lifted his staff. David ran toward Goliath. Each of them did something before they saw something. They didn't wait for evidence. They acted on a word. Sometimes the reason you haven't seen progress isn't because God's ignoring you, but because you're still standing still. Movement is the language of faith. When you start moving, you're telling heaven, I believe it's already done. You might not have the full plan, but take the step you do know. The next instruction usually comes after your obedience, not before it. God gives direction in motion, not in hesitation. You'll never discover what's on the other side of obedience if you refuse to move. Fear loves comfort. It will convince you that waiting is wisdom when it's really avoidance. You'll start saying things like, I'm just waiting on the right time. But the right time doesn't exist. Faith creates it. If you want to see God's hand, you have to stretch your hand first. The blessing you're praying for is waiting for your boldness to catch up. Sometimes God doesn't part the sea until you step into the water. He doesn't multiply the bread until you start breaking it. He doesn't bring the walls down until you start walking around them. You've been asking God for a sign, but he's waiting for a step. Movement unlocks miracles. When you move, God multiplies. Stop overthinking it. You don't need a perfect plan, you need a faithful heart. The first step is usually the scariest, but it's also the most important. God honors motion more than intention. You can dream all day, pray all night, but until you move, nothing changes. It's time to stop asking and start acting. God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your participation. Miracles don't meet the fearful, they meet the faithful. The moment you take that first step, you'll realize he's been waiting there all along. Faith starts where your comfort zone ends. Move even if you're scared, because when you move, God moves too. Failure has a way of making you question your faith. You start thinking maybe you heard God wrong, maybe you're not meant for it, maybe it's time to quit. But hear this, failure is not final. It's just feedback. God uses failure to redirect you, not to reject you. What feels like an ending is often an edit. He's not changing the promise, he's changing your path. Every successful person you admire has a trail of failures behind them. The difference is, they didn't stop there. They learned, they adjusted, they trusted. God doesn't waste pain, he recycles it for purpose. Every time you fail, you're gaining the wisdom your next level will require. If you never failed, you'd never learn how to stand when life knocks you down. Sometimes God lets something fail because he's trying to protect you from what you can't see. You thought that relationship ending was a disaster, but it was deliverance. You thought losing that job was a setback, but it was a setup. God will close doors you would have walked through blindly. Don't cry over what he canceled. Thank him for what he's creating. Failure isn't a sign that God left you. It's a sign that he's still molding you. He's stripping away pride, building endurance, and teaching you how to rely on him instead of results. The blessing is not just in the victory, it's in the process. Every mistake becomes a lesson when faith stays in the driver's seat. You can't let failure define your faith. Just because you fell once doesn't mean you're finished. Peter failed publicly, but he still preached powerfully. Moses messed up, but he still parted seas. David fell, but he still became king. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses people who refuse to give up after failure. You can fall and still fulfill your calling. Stop calling yourself a failure just because something didn't work out. You're not finished until God says you are. What looks like failure is often the foundation for your next miracle. The same God who let it fall apart will use those broken pieces to build something better. You don't lose when you fail. You lose when you stop believing after you fail. Failure can fool your emotions, but it can't fool your destiny. The very thing that felt like loss might be what leads you into your breakthrough. Hold your head up. Dust yourself off. God's not done. Sometimes he has to let something break so he can rebuild you stronger than before. You've been praying, working, waiting, and nothing seems to be moving. The door hasn't opened, the opportunity hasn't come, the breakthrough hasn't arrived. And it's easy to start wondering if maybe God said no. But delay doesn't mean denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. God's not yet is not the same as no. Sometimes he's just aligning things behind the scenes so the blessing won't break you when it comes. You see, God doesn't rush destiny. He refines it. He's not late. He's preparing perfect timing. What you think is wasted time is often training time. The reason the promise is taking longer than you expected is because God is strengthening your character to carry it. He's more concerned about who you become than what you get. When the weight feels unbearable, remember, God's delay is not punishment, it's preparation. Some blessings require maturity. If he gave it to you too early, you might misuse it. If he opened the door before your heart was ready, you might step into something you couldn't sustain. So instead of asking, when God, start asking, what are you building in me while I wait? The delay isn't wasted when you use it to grow. Delay is often a test of faith. Anybody can believe when the answer comes quickly, but real faith says, even if it takes a while, I still trust you. That's where the power is. That's where the depth is. When your faith can outlast your frustration, that's when heaven takes notice. The waiting season reveals who truly believes. God doesn't forget promises. He's not ignoring your prayers. He's storing them up for the right moment. When it happens, it'll happen suddenly, and you'll realize why it took so long. The timing you called too late will turn out to be right on time. You'll look back and say, if it had happened earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. You've got to stop measuring God's faithfulness by your timeline. Faith is not about speed, it's about endurance. God might let it take time because he's using that time to teach you dependence. Every delay deepens your trust, sharpens your patience, and enlarges your capacity to receive what's coming. Don't despise the delay. God hasn't denied you, he's developing you. What feels like waiting is actually working. Keep your faith steady, stay obedient, stay grateful. The delay is not denial, it's divine timing preparing you for divine destiny. Your words have power, more power than you realize. You can't keep speaking defeat and expect victory to show up. You can't say, I'm tired, I'm stuck, I'll never make it, and then wonder why life doesn't change. What comes out of your mouth sets the direction of your destiny. You've got to start speaking what you seek until you see it. Don't let your mouth cancel what your faith is trying to create. The world was formed by words. God said, let there be, and there was. You were created in his image, which means your words carry creative authority too. When you speak faith, you activate heaven's response. When you speak doubt, you strengthen fear's grip. You can't control everything around you, but you can control what you say about it. Speak life even when you see loss. There will be days when your feelings don't match your faith. That's where discipline kicks in. You've got to open your mouth and declare victory when everything around you screams defeat. Speak it until your spirit believes it. Speak it until your situation aligns with it. Sometimes you have to prophesy over your own life, even when nothing looks promising. Your words are like seeds. What you plant today will grow tomorrow. If you keep speaking negativity, you'll harvest frustration. But if you keep speaking faith, you'll harvest favor. Don't let your emotions dictate your declarations. Speak from conviction, not condition. The situation might not have changed yet, but your words are building the atmosphere for it to change. Even when you feel unseen, keep speaking like it's already done. Say, I'm blessed. I'm favored. I'm healed. I'm chosen. I'm built for this. You're not lying. You're aligning. You're not describing your situation. You're declaring your future. Heaven responds to faith-filled speech. Your miracle may already be on the way. Your words just need to open the door. Sometimes your biggest battle is with your own mouth. You pray for breakthroughs and then speak like you don't believe they'll happen. You can't mix faith with fear and expect fruit. Your words must match your prayers. Stop saying, if it happens, and start saying, when it happens. That's how believers talk. Keep declaring even when you don't see results. Don't stop just because it's quiet. The walls of Jericho didn't fall until after 7 days of marching and shouting. Your words are building pressure in the spirit realm. One day, everything you've been speaking will manifest, and you'll realize your voice carried the victory all along. Everybody loves the idea of faith, but few are ready for the test that comes with it. You can't have untested faith and expect unshakable results. God doesn't test your faith to break you. He tests it to prove you. Before he can trust you with miracles, he has to know your faith won't collapse under pressure. Tests aren't punishment, they're preparation for power. Faith sounds strong until it's tested by delay, loss, or uncertainty. You can shout about trusting God on Sunday, but the real question is, can you still trust him on Thursday when the news is bad, the bills are due, and nothing adds up? That's where real faith is revealed. When you can't trace his hand, but you still trust his heart, you've passed the test. The test of faith often looks like silence from heaven. You pray and hear nothing. You believe and see no progress. But that silence doesn't mean God's absent, it means he's watching. Teachers don't talk during tests. God is quiet not because he's gone, but because he's measuring your endurance. The question is, will you still believe when you feel alone? Tests expose motives. Are you believing for comfort or for calling? Do you trust him only when he blesses you or even when he's building you? Faith that depends on outcomes isn't faith, it's negotiation. Real faith says, even if I don't get it, I'll still serve you. That kind of faith can't be shaken by circumstances because it's rooted in conviction. Every test you pass becomes proof of your growth. When you survive disappointment, but keep believing, heaven takes note. When you lose something but still worship, you graduate to a higher level of faith. The test might feel painful, but it's proof you're trusted. God wouldn't test you if he didn't see greatness in you. The fire you're in is not meant to destroy you. It's meant to define you. Gold has to go through heat before it shines. Likewise, your faith must face pressure before it's pure. Don't run from the fire. Walk through it knowing you're being refined, not ruined. The test today becomes the testimony tomorrow. If your faith is being tested right now, rejoice. It means God sees you as strong enough to carry what's next. The test is temporary, but the trust it builds lasts forever. When you come out of this, your faith won't just be talked about. It'll be proven. At some point, you've got to stop praying small prayers. You've got to stop asking God for what's comfortable and start asking him for what's crazy. The size of your prayer reveals the size of your faith. God is not intimidated by your big requests. He's insulted by your small ones. He's a God of abundance, not limitation. Believe bigger. Pray bolder. We serve a God who turned water into wine, who split seas, who raised the dead. And yet we hesitate to ask him to fix a marriage, open a door, or cancel a debt. You think it's too big, but he specializes in impossible. When you limit your prayers, you limit your possibilities. If you're going to believe, believe all the way. Stop playing it safe with a limitless God. Sometimes you pray small because disappointment made you cautious. You asked before and it didn't happen, so now you whisper instead of declare. But faith doesn't shrink because of past pain. Every no was just making space for a better ways. Don't let a closed door make you close your mouth. Pray again, louder this time. God's not tired of hearing you. He's training you to trust him. Big prayers require bold faith. You can't pray for mountains to move if you're not ready to climb. You've got to combine your belief with boldness. Pray like you already have it. Speak like you already see it. Praise like it's already done. That's the language of impossible faith. It doesn't beg, it declares. Your bold prayers won't always bring instant answers, but they will always bring divine attention. Heaven leans in when faith speaks fearlessly. You may not see it right away, but God is moving things you can't see. Keep praying big, even when it feels too much. He loves proving himself to those who trust him completely. Faith doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to. You're not called to understand the how. You're called to believe in the who. Stop trying to figure it all out. Pray big and let God be God. The only thing standing between you and your miracle might just be the size of your prayer. So go ahead, ask for the impossible. Believe for the miraculous. Pray prayers that scare you. Because the same God who made the stars has the power to make a way for you. If you're going to believe, then believe big.